Hey guys, I'm here to do my July wrap up. I read 3 books this month, which makes me really happy because for the last couple of months I just haven't been reading regularly, and so this month was a real turnaround month for me. I read 3 books consistently, and I'm also in the middle of 2 books, so I'm really happy with that. I'm going to go over the books that I read and also briefly touch on the books that I am in the middle of. The first one that I read was The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. This is a story of a woman named Cora who is in kind of an abusive marriage where she's controlled and can't really be herself. Her husband suddenly passes away, and so she has this newfound freedom and decides to explore the myth/legend of the Essex Serpent. And so that's kind of where the story begins. She meets this priest named Will, and he is kind of the local priest in a really small town, and they kind of butt heads and are completely different, and so of course that attracts them to one another. Will has a family, and Cora has her son and her servant/best friend named Martha, and they kind of explore this myth/legend, and also we get to know a little bit more about the local townsfolk and their experiences with this Essex Serpent. And towards the end of the book we have kind of a big reveal, and yeah, that's kind of what the story is about. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I thought it was amazing when I first started it, and I was kind of hating it towards the end. It's beautifully written, and a lot of the characters are really fleshed out and unique. I particularly loved Kara. I thought she was a unlikely heroine. I enjoyed her personality. I enjoyed her newfound freedom and the things that she became interested in, and I loved her enthusiasm for trying to figure out what the Essex Serpent is all about. I also enjoyed the discussions between religion and science that she and Will end up having, and that was all very interesting. But then towards the end of the book, there's like the romance plot that starts to unravel, and I just did not enjoy it. I thought that it was unnecessary, and so that's why I gave it 3 stars. However, I do think if you love historical fiction or literary fiction, then you will enjoy it because, like I said, it is beautifully written. I thought it could have been a lot better if Cora had not had any romantic interest, and if Cora and Will had just been friends. I think it would have been a much better story, but that's just my opinion. A lot of people love this book, so it's an unpopular opinion, so I don't want to discourage anyone from picking it up, but I definitely was not a fan of the ending. And then the next one that I read was the complete opposite. I absolutely loved this book, and that's My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. I was so happy when I finished this book. It's one of the few books where as soon as I finished it, I was just so jealous of anybody else that would be able to read it for the first time and have kind of the shock/realization at the end. I'm not gonna have that experience again, so I'm incredibly jealous of anybody that gets to pick this up and have that. This is a story of a young man named Philip. He grows up with his older relative Ambrose. Philip's parents die, and so Ambrose takes him in. They grow up together very close, and then Ambrose goes on a trip to Italy, and while in Italy he runs into their cousin Rachel. Ambrose and Rachel become married, and then as Ambrose and Philip exchange letters, Philip starts to realize that his uncle is not really acting like he usually does. There's something off with him, and then mysteriously Ambrose dies. Because of certain things that Ambrose has written in letters, Philip thinks that Rachel is at fault, so he goes in search of her. He doesn't find her in Italy, and it turns out it's because she's on her way to his house. So Philip is prepared to hate Rachel. He doesn't want anything to do with her. He thinks, like I said, that she is the whole reason his uncle passed away. He doesn't trust her. But then when he meets her, he kind of falls under her spell and becomes obsessed with her a little bit. And so that's kind of the gist of the story. Philip is a very frustrating character to read about. He is consistent from start to finish, a very ignorant, naive type of man. He clearly doesn't know what he's in for. And Rachel, on the other hand, she's a very calculating survivor, and she's older than him and has been through a lot. So they're kind of very different, and there's kind of a big misunderstanding between them where they each want each other for different things. So that's kind of the idea that I got from the characters anyway, and I thought it was perfect for the story. And I thought that the experience of reading this book was just so unique, because as a reader, you don't know what Rachel is all about. You know, we kind of understand Philip. He's not a very complicated character, but Rachel is. And so there's always this like mystery surrounding her. You know, is she a victim? Is she a murderer? Do you pity her? You have all of these questions as a reader, and then there's a big climax at the end where you really kind of understand things on a new way, and that doesn't really happen with a lot of books. So that kind of made this book what it is for me. I really can't decide if I enjoy this one or Rebecca more, because to me they're both brilliant but very, very different. So if Rebecca and the synopsis about Rebecca does not interest you, then I recommend that you pick up My Cousin Rachel, because it's just as brilliant, just a whole different story with a whole different vibe. And then the last book that I read was The Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders, and The Birth of the FBI, and this is by David Grann. This is my first book by him, and I will be reading more books by him after this, because I thought this was brilliantly done. This is a true story of the Osage tribe in the 1920s. They settle there, and after they settle there, they find out that they're sitting on a lot of oil, and so they become very, very rich. They're giving these things called head rights, and they're passed, to your next of kin. And so what ends up happening is that in the 1920s, a lot of Osage Indians are either murdered or die under suspicious circumstances. And it's happening at an alarming rate. So over time, nobody knows who's doing this. It starts to look like a plot. And so Hoover decides to form a special unit to go out there to Oklahoma to find out what's happening. And that's how the FBI is born. This book was so frustrating to read at times. I wanted to chuck it at the wall because I couldn't believe what I was reading most of the time. These Osage Indians were ridiculed. They were seen as less than. They had guardians kind of assigned to them because apparently the government felt that they couldn't handle their own money. So they had these white guardians to kind of have hold of their bank accounts, control what kind of money they could spend. Some of these Osage Indians families were starving, and their houses were taken from them, all because they were different, and all because certain white people thought that they deserved to have those things that those Indians had. And that's just something that is so prevalent in our history, and something that I feel like it's important to read about, because the phrase history repeats itself is not just a phrase. It happens so often. And it's something that I think it's important for us to, be aware of, so that we don't keep repeating history. But, it just keeps happening. And that's what's so frustrating about this book for me. And that's why I kind of had to take breaks from it, because, there's just so many parallels here between then and what's happening today. This book has a lot of photos and notes and a lot of research that went into this. So I highly recommend it if you've been seeing it around. It's not very long, and like I said, it's very important to read about it, not just because this is a moment in history that a lot of people don't know about, but because it's important to just be aware of, what this type of thinking could lead to. So I really enjoyed that. And then the two books that I'm in the middle of, the first one is The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth Kolbert. I'm really enjoying this. I'm actually going to finish this one today. It's about the Sixth Extinction, which we are going through right now. So it's, horrifying, but it's very important to read about this, and it's something that's always interested me anyway. There's just so much information that she goes into, and I really love her writing style. It's made it a very enjoyable read. And then I'm also reading North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I'm actually buddy reading this with Amanda. We're really enjoying this so far. It started off kind of slow for me. I wasn't really into it that much. And then over time, I'm starting to really enjoy these characters, and there's some really heartbreaking things that are happening to them, and I'm starting to really feel for them, and so that's always fun. We decided we wanted to read some Victorian lit, so this is perfect for that. I recently started The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This is a book that's been recommended to me so many times, and I'm actually really enjoying it. It's very different than I thought it would be in a good way, so I hope to read more of this coming week. So that's what I read this month. Let me know down in the comments if you read any of these books or what your favorite read of this month was. I'd love to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.